Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Try calling the cops and getting my car towed again." I live in a county where we have abandoned vehicle laws. Basically, if a car has been parked for more than 72 hours on any public road other than private property, it is deemed abandoned and will be towed. The public road includes curbs in front of residences, in this case, my house. Now, cops usually couldn't give a fart about cars parked in front of residences, but a very dear neighbor of mine decided he didn't like my car, it's an old car, ruining the property value of the neighborhood, whatever that means, and called my car in. I admit I ride my motorcycle more often than my car, so it's been neglected, but I've been driving, washing her every week to make sure she's maintained. One day I notice my car is gone on my way to work. I immediately found out it's been towed as we have a pretty good online public database. After talking to the sheriff, he informed me someone, he wouldn't say but I know who, called it in and it was a legal tow. Didn't argue with him since they were just doing their job. He did however inform me with a chuckle, "We check if the vehicle has been moved by chalking it. If it's moved or smudged, you're good." That's exactly what I did. A week after getting my car back, and lo behold, a chalk mark. I smudged the chalk mark with my shoe and moved 1 foot forward for good measure. This crap continued for a month, it got chalked 8 times, before the dickbag confronted me. He wanted me to put my car in the garage or else. I then laughed and asked, "What are you going to do, call the cops?" Shut him up real good, as I'm fairly sure the cops warned him not to call them again. He then shook his head and stomped back to his house. The next one is titled, "Take my license plates then." I'm currently spending a few weeks visiting my in-laws in Mexico. My wife, daughter and I took my in-laws' car to go get some groceries from the Tianguis street market and turned down a road that leads right to it. No sooner had I done this, and a police officer on his motorcycle pulled me over. Now, it's very obvious by the color of my skin as well as my accent that I am most definitely not Mexican, or from any Latin American country for that matter. Mildly important for the story. Police officer, Joven, this road is one direction only. When the market is here, you can't drive this way on the road. Me, oh, sorry. I didn't know that. P.O., can I see your license please? I, unfortunately, didn't have my wallet on me. The Tianguis is cash only, so I didn't bother. This also meant that I didn't have my license on me either, which was 100% my bad. Me, I'm sorry officer, but I left it at the house. P.O., well, that's 2 tickets, one for driving the wrong way, and the other for not having your license on you. I'm going to have to ticket you, and as a guarantee that you'll go pay it, I will have to take your license plates. I had never heard this before. Turns out, this is a common tactic for slightly less honest police officers to scare people into bribing them, since that essentially takes people's cars away, since you can't drive your car without plates. It's also illegal, he has no right to do so. So, I decided to call his bluff and comply. Me, okay officer, you can take my plates. When should I go see the judge to pay my tickets and get my plates back? P.O., a bit taken aback, well, I don't really know. It could be a while. Me, well, I'm happy to go pay my fines if she is back before Thursday, because that's when my flight leaves. P.O., I don't really know. Me, well, that's okay. I'm the one who broke the law, so go ahead and take my plates. The officer walked away for a minute and pulled another car over that came down the same road as us. I think that during the time realized I wasn't going to pay him and that he legally couldn't take my plates, and that the tickets he was threatening me with wouldn't add up to much and would probably just get dropped, because when he came back, P.O., you know what, I'm just going to let you go with a warning. Me, awesome. Thanks officer. The next one is titled, "You want me to save the company $34 million a year? I'll do just that and get you fired." This is a story that's somewhat legendary around my mini site that I work at, and I think it belongs here. One of the big bosses, we'll call him BB, around the site decided to be a smart ass one day, and instructed someone a level below him, we'll call him AA, to save the mine $34 million a year. Here's what's important, BB said didn't care how he did it, he told AA to just get it done or else he'd make sure they'd lose their job. Now AA had been putting up with crap from this BB for the past few months. There's a code of conduct and responsibility that needs to be followed, and BB worked very hard to find his way through every loophole possible that stopped him from slacking off. This includes dumping a fair amount of extra work into his employees, but the one in this tale of pro-revenge had it the worst. BB would constantly belittle AA on the mine radios, dump extra paperwork on him, including BB's own paperwork, and make him drive other employees around the mine site when AA was already swamped with the extra paperwork, causing him to lag behind in his other duties that he was supposed to be doing. AA was no assistant, it was not his job to do BB's crap, and if he refused, BB technically could start the process of AA's termination through some bullshit loophole. So here's where it gets interesting. After BB instructed AA to save the mine $34 a year, AA figured out damn well that BB was trying to kiss the butt of the higher-ups and make himself look good. However, instead of doing the work himself, he has once again dumped it onto AA. And AA had had enough. BB has his designated time off and comes back to find a massive, and I mean massive, this thing is one of the biggest production movers on site, conveyor line parked up miles away from where it is supposed to be operating and in the equipment graveyard. If you haven't seen a conveyor line, think if a crane and a conveyor belt had an enormous love child. It has been disassembled and sits in 3 enormous pieces. BB flies off of the handle. He explodes, he gets onto the mine radios and screams for AA to get his butt down there. AA rocks up, and when asked what in hell he'd done, AA simply shrugs and says, "I've pulled the conveyor out of production. It saves you $34 million a year." No matter what BB argued or how much he threatened, AA simply said, "You told me to save $34 million a year. I did just that." No matter how much money the mine would actually lose with this massive machine out of construction, AA did as he was told. Of course the big bosses found out, and when they questioned BB about it, he pointed to blame to AA. Once again, AA stood his ground and said that he was done as he was told. Once BB confirmed what he had instructed AA to do, it wasn't long before BB was sacked. He packed his stuff and walked out of the gate that same day. AA still happily remains, stress-free and not to be ducked with. The next one is titled, "Can't Wait to Get Rid of Me?" No problem. Oh, now you want me back? Nah. The setting, late 2012, when I was working as a graphic designer and social media marketing exec at a nonprofit. When I started this job the year before, I had a wonderful supervisor who trusted me a lot, while also being wisely assertive in times when I could do a lot better. He had a lot of great ideas. We had a good working relationship and I learned a lot from him. During staff evaluations, every 6 months, he'd be honest with me without being nasty. Gave constructive criticism on my weaker areas while encouraging me in areas I excelled in. About 8 months later, my supervisor decided to leave his job and move back to his home country. Because of this, his position of supervising the media peeps was given to another staff in the company. Let's name him GG. Is skilled at coding but not so much on the visual communication side of things, yet he would critique my and the other media guys' work in ways that sometimes didn't make sense. One example would be him watching over me super closely, like his head was next to mine, as I worked on the iMac, and his breath would stink of garlic from lunch. Then he'd tell me that I should put all the text in center alignment because anything but isn't aesthetically pleasing, cue eye roll. He'd burp aloud often. It's worse when he had a cold and would make it very clear that he's congested and phlegm-white. I didn't have as good of a working relationship with him compared to my previous supervisor, but I did what I could. There was a lot of unspoken tension between us, and I noticed between him and a few other staff in the company as well. A few months into having G as my supervisor, it was time for the next staff evaluation. It was awful. He criticized me for not listening to his creative suggestions, blamed and scolded me for things I did months ago that I couldn't even remember, etc. For example, "You said something disrespectful to our boss 3 months ago. That is not good character." Like, dude, if I was out of line, at least tell me there and then rather than wait for 3 months at an evaluation to dump all the crap on me. I was in tears from just how he was handling it. Then he gave me an ultimatum: it's either I get demoted to an intern position with a pay cut and be under observation for the next 6 months, or I could choose to quit. And oh, I was told sternly not to talk to anyone else about this because it was private and confidential. So basically I walked out of the office with a red and swollen face, and the other media team guy, who's a good friend by the way, was super concerned. I could only say, I was threatened not to say anything. But I just might when this is over. That evening, I spoke to my mum, a HR manager in a multinational company, about this incident with G, and she said something that shocked me. Apparently, it's common for supervisors, managers to keep quiet about a staff's perceived wrongdoings for months until it's time for staff evaluations, just so the staff could be denied of a raise and such. My mum advised me to resign and move on to something less toxic. So I wrote my letter and handed it in the very next day. My notice was 3 months to wrap up a project in which I carried significant weight, but he insisted that the day I handed in my letter was my last with them. I was shocked. And he added that I was to tell no one about it. So basically, it was my last day at work and I had to pretend I was coming to work the next day, but actually, no, I would be gone for good. Let's just say the next day, the other staff were shocked that I was gone. Till this day I have no idea what was said about me and the reason for why I left abruptly. My media teammate reached out to me and was like, please tell me the truth of what happened. I trusted him and told him everything. Fast forward to almost a year later, another staff left the company because of G, and another manager begged me to come back because for the past year no one was able to fill my shoes. I said, well, I was kinda forced to leave and it didn't seem like you guys wanted me to be around, so my answer is no. All the best. Without me. They were only able to find someone to take over my position perhaps 1.5 to 2 years after I was forced to leave. Ha! The next one is titled, Take This Job and Do It Exactly as Described. The setup. Years ago I worked support for a tech company for a little over a year. It was a small firm that provided websites controlled on the client side by an archaic program that had been coded in the early O, and the only major updates to the thing were to make it work on newer versions of Windows. I was hired on as Tier 1 tech support. They didn't have a Tier 2 tech support at the time, but they said they were looking to create that role and planned on transitioning me towards that new position after a couple of months to get my feet wet in the system. Get your interview promises in writing, people. The place was a clusterfuck. Turnover was ridiculous. Hours were long and the occasional free lunch and beers at the company meeting once a week was supposed to make up for it. The people at the top were deluded and the people at the bottom were overworked and tended to use the place as a stepping stone to getting enough experience for a job somewhere else. Around this time I also started self-publishing on the side. Writing had always been my passion and ultimate career goal, and I quickly went from making beer and pizza money to making as much money as I was making at my day job. In this time I held up my end of the bargain though. I learned the system inside and out. I knew enough about web development that I could make fixes and updates that used to be sent to the web team, which could take a week or longer because they were as overworked as everyone else. I became friends with the head of the product dev team and helped create better processes for funneling serious bug reports to them and shielding them from piddling bullshit which they loved. Basically I was doing the Tier 2 job they'd promised me, but they kept my job description and pay the same as everyone else. All while promising me they would make the new position soon and I just needed to hang on. Then one day I'm passing by my boss's office and hear him talking about me. He says they're going to create a new position eventually, but it's going to be at least half a year out because they don't want to hire another warm body to fill the Tier 1 spot, and why bother when I'm doing all this higher level work at a lower pay grade. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I called my wife and explained the situation. She was just upset and said it was time to pull the trigger. I decided to wait out a couple of paychecks, but a month before my planned quitting date I was checked out. Cue malicious compliance mode. The sales team and unpaid extra tickets came in with clients asking for updates to their sites that should have been quoted out to the sales team for cold hard cash, but always ended up getting done for free through support when they bitched to the president. I started gleefully telling them no and referring them to the sales team because that wasn't something that should be handled by the support department. Sales naturally hated this. They saw their job as landing new clients and they didn't have the time to deal with clients bothering them for bullshit add-ons to their website that don't make us commission. Whoops. The boss had a conversation with me about this. I pointed out that I was just following procedure and trying to refer things to the appropriate department. Boss was clearly annoyed and told me to be a team player. I continued being a team player by referring angry clients to the sales team who was supposed to handle those calls. Flooding the web devs. Remember all those little fixes I was making to websites that took some of the heat off of the web development team? It reduced turnaround for support tickets and allowed the web people to focus on making money. Win-win. Unfortunately, once I decided I was out of there, it was also time for me to follow my job description to the letter. That meant that any requests for updates to client websites had to be routed to the web team. Delays for these fixes quickly increased 2 weeks, and I explained to clients that we were just following standard procedure and routing things to the correct team to make sure it got done correctly. The bug backlog. Any support tickets for serious bugs in the system had been routed through me because I'd been working with the dev team, right? Well, I told my boss that unfortunately I was so busy with my very important Tier 1 job responsibilities as described that I wouldn't have time to do the higher level bug routing any longer. The end result was a return to the bad old days. Tickets got logged and sent over to the developers. Yes, the support team had direct access to product devs and could walk over and bug them whenever under the old system, and their productivity took a hit while clients got frustrated because if you take a scattershot approach to identifying and fixing bugs, it takes longer to identify and fix bugs. Who woulda think it? Brutally honest. This isn't malicious compliance exactly, but it was pretty fun. I had my own gig going and I didn't need a reference, so anytime a client would go to an executive to try and do an end run for something impossible, I would simply be honest to the exec rather than tap dancing around the problem. So, for example, I upset the president when he told me I wasn't good with clients, and I told him that being terrified of telling a client no and wasting countless man-hours having people research how to do something impossible and eventually going back to the client to tell them the answer we knew within the first 5 minutes was worse. The VP of sales got mad and asked why I couldn't be more helpful with an issue a client was having with something that's an industry standard. I politely asked him if he could provide me with a DeLorean and a flux capacitor so we could go back to 1987 when they implemented the standard he was complaining about and ask them to change it. Mic drop. After that last one, I got called into my boss's office for the last time. He told me that I needed to watch my tone and be a better team player. That if I wasn't able to handle all my responsibilities, then I needed to work longer hours rather than stop doing them. He asked if I had any response. I told him I was putting in my notice. I'd heard him talking about stringing me along, and for the next 2 weeks I wasn't going to do a damn thing that wasn't in my job description. Was I a little unprofessional there at the end? Probably, but this workplace was anything but professional. In the year and a half I ended up working there, they regularly screwed over their workers, and I figured I had that rarest of rare opportunities to tell them where they could take their job and shove it by doing the job exactly as it was described. The next one is titled, "Tell Me to Hide Products in Order to Not Offend Male Co-Workers." Consider it done. Background: I work in a fast-paced healthcare environment where every minute counts, and I have both male and female co-workers on my shift. We have lockers with opaque doors where we're allowed to store our things. When I'm in the office area, I leave mine unlocked for easy access, and I've started keeping a box of tampons in my locker. I've told my female co-workers if they're in a hurry and need a tampon, they're welcome to just open my locker when it's unlocked and I'm in the office and take one, no problem. I got called into my boss's office the other day because a male co-worker of mine complained that me keeping tampons in my locker was disgusting, and he hated that he could see the box whenever my locker was opened. My boss, a male, told me that some men were really sensitive to this type of thing, and that I should try hiding them in a different type of box so I wouldn't offend my co-workers. I asked what the point was because my co-workers would see someone reaching into a crackers, Pop-Tarts, etc. box and taking out a tampon instead of food anyway. My boss got all huffy and told me that it was for the best and I needed to do it. Well, fine. I made a cover for my tampon box that said Mother Earth's Bloody Nutrients Bars, with extra gooey, nutritious filling, with a photo of a bloody bathtub, and placed it on the box. That was 2 days ago, and I saw the male coworker open my locker, trying to be sneaky, and he paled when he read the box, got all angry, and I received an email from my boss that my cover wasn't funny and that I need to take it down. So I emailed our HR person a copy of the email as well as a summary of what happened and photos of the lockers, the box, and the cover. I also suggested that the male coworker sit somewhere where he didn't have a direct line of sight to my locker if it really offended him so much. She thought it was freaking hilarious and said I followed my supervisor's instructions, and so I was fine. Nothing else has been done yet, and I'm mostly angry that my time was spent on something as stupid as this and not on patient work. Edit. I've documented everything and am encouraging my coworkers, male and female, to do the same. HR is now in the loop and they have told me they have had multiple people come forward saying similar things, that they're doing some investigating. So hopefully things change. The last one is titled, Update, Tell Me to Hide period products in order to not offend male coworkers. Consider it done. Wow, so much has happened. In the past few weeks my family has undergone personal tragedies which have made my time at work difficult to complete with my family responsibilities, but I've managed to accomplish a few things. First of all, my HR complaint went so far as to be brought in front of the employee committee board, one step below big-time admin people. When I was brought in to explain what had happened, my HR rep told me that my boss had filed a complaint against me, citing that he had told me to cover the tattoos on my arms, not the box of tampons in my locker. I was completely floored. Not had this not been an issue before, it certainly hadn't been the subject of his emails or our discussions on the subject. I brought up these concerns to my HR rep, and she was already quite livid with the numerous concerns brought to her by other coworkers. She told me that she would give the emails between me and my boss as well as documents from her and my original discussions to the board, as well as a copy of my hospital's tattoo policy. Our policy states that all tattoos have to be covered around patients and outside agencies, but it says nothing about having tattoos uncovered in personal office spaces, as long as the tattoos are not offensive or hateful. I have pretty prominent tattoos all over my arms that are all very meaningful to me, and say nothing about hate, specific people, etc. Whenever I am outside the office I wear sleeves and/or a lab coat. It is only inside our little office that I take them off for comfort while doing my work. A good number of my coworkers do the same thing. The second complaint on my boss's list is that I have company property, my laptop, inside my locker, and therefore it should be forbidden to leave it unlocked. My problem with this is that my laptop is always on my desk while I'm in the office, as I'm only in the office while I'm actively using my laptop, so it wouldn't be in the locker anyway. When I leave I place it in my locker and lock it. It is clear that he's nitpicking tiny things in order to minimize my complaint over his behavior and cover his own ass. It's ridiculous. Keep in mind that all of this information has been given over a series of emails from me and my rep due to me being out of the office and me being on the opposite work schedule as her, so it's taking a long time to get all of our ducks in order. We put together a portfolio for the board that included all of our emails, documented witness statements from coworkers who have witnessed his behavior, and a compromise. We petitioned the board to stock our small employee one-stall bathroom with tampons and pads in return for me locking my locker at all times. According to my rep, the admin bathrooms already have stocked period products, and she was surprised to find out ours didn't. There is a little white cupboard that has extra soap and TP in our bathroom already that would easily fit some tampons. I found out Friday that the board approved our petition, threw out my boss's complaints with a stern word that I was to wear my sleeves at all times, just to avoid future complaints, and that both my boss and my coworker are required to attend a certain number of gender sensitivity classes, I wasn't told how many, as well as write me formal letters of apology. Rumor was also going around that my coworker was put on probation. Christmas came early and it certainly made a terrible time in my life less hectic and more peaceful. The board is still investigating claims made by coworkers, and we still have a long way to go, but damn it if that doesn't make me feel so much better. Thank you all for your support. Edit 1. Clarification. I was told they're changing the company-wide policy for all employees on the tattoo rules. So thankfully it's not just me. Thanks for listening.